Hello and welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses, wherever you're tuning into the episode. Welcome back. Coming up on today's show, we look back on the weekend's win over East Kilbride, which saw the Dons go 6 from 6 in terms of points in the League Cup group stage, with a fairly routine 4-0 win over the Lowland League champions. We'll also discuss some of the performances. What have we learnt so far from the squad, and also share our thoughts ahead of the Airdrie and Dumbarton games coming up, because until we make another signing, we'll just do the one show a week. So over to you, Dave Cormack and Alan Burrows on that. Joining me on the show today to look back at the win over East Kilbride was someone who was there and someone who's familiar to those of you that regularly tune into the show. Jay Moyer, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Glenn. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. And it's quite good to have you on the show for one specific talking point for those that follow you on social media specifically. But it's also good to have someone that was actually physically at the game. I was not in attendance at the weekend, and I think I was actually watching a stream of someone who was filming their own stream on their computer. It was a very surreal experience on that. So we will discuss the game, and also I failed to mention as well, coming up after we've given our thoughts on the game coming up, well, tomorrow night as we record this on Monday evening, Jay, we've got the opposition insight into Airdrie from Arran Ewart, who forms part of the OTL podcast and part of the Airdrie media team. So a good half-hour insight into tomorrow night's opposition, or today's opposition when you might be listening back to this. But we'll start with the game at the weekend, Jay. A 4-0 win probably doesn't tell everything from the game. I suppose if we want to start with some of the positives, that's now 7 goals scored over the 2 games and 6 different scorers. So something myself and Phil spoke about on the last episode when specifically mentioning Esther Sokler, that we maybe want to see the kind of spread around the team, taking off the pressure on the strikers, and that's definitely encouraging to see that the midfielders, obviously Nicky Devlin also opening the scoring, but mainly the midfielders chipping in with goals.
Yeah, definitely. You always want goals to come from different areas of the pitch. I would have liked Sokler to score for a bit of momentum, considering we all sort of think we're going to lose Boyan. But yeah, you know, when everyone's chipping in with a goal, you can't really complain. But if I'm being a bit greedy, I would have liked to see Esther back in the score sheet.
Yeah, I think I would have agreed on that. What did you make of Esther's performance on Saturday? I know we're going to maybe speak about the level of opposition we've been coming up against, but I thought he was a bit anonymous for large parts.
Yeah, it was a strange game. I thought we took maybe 10, 15 minutes to actually get into the game. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say that I was unimpressed, but I expected a lot more from us. In terms of performance, I think we got a bit caught in a trap of playing how East Kilbride wanted us to play and make the game stuffy. But I think eventually when we started pressing them, because they obviously like to try and play it for the back, once we sort of caught on to that and started to press, you could then see how we took control. But yeah, it was a strange game. I expected a bit more from us, but second game of the season, it's difficult to be too critical.
Yeah, I think too critical, level of opposition, second game of the season, they're all valid points. Do you think as well the fact that Airdrie convincingly beat East Kilbride a few days before, 6-0 up at half-time, maybe raised the expectation levels of our support? And there was probably the fact that, you know, as you said, we took that 15, 20 minutes to get going. There was, because I know I certainly felt like, Airdrie had scored 3 or 4 by this point. How have we not scored yet?
Yeah, that's definitely the expectation, isn't it? You think, well, if they're scoring 8, we'll score 18, you know, but obviously that's never going to happen. You know, they're not going to get beat 8-0 again. The East Kilbride players will, you know, they're not going to let that happen. They'll settle a bit more. But yeah, look, I think it's difficult to come on and you know, sort of criticise a 4-0 win. You would expect, you know, 7-8, but you know, realistically, that's not going to happen. And, you know, we've not conceded a goal yet. So, you know, as I say, you can't really be too harsh on the boys at the minute.
Yeah, we'll speak about that actually. Just now before we come on to the forward line, then picking up on your point there about the fact that we've not conceded. Ross Doohan starting the game in place of Dimitar Mitov. For me, nice touch from Jimmy, giving Ross some early minutes into the season. Not that again, like his appearance against Bonnie Rigg, we've not really learnt too much about Ross's abilities because again, very rarely tested. A
Yeah.
change to the centre back partnership with Angus MacDonald coming in to replace Rubezic. As someone that was at the game, what did you make of that partnership? What was the communication like? Because I've seen a lot online that there was a lot of that both Jack McKenzie and Nicky Devlin are extremely vocal in the wing back. How did
Yeah.
you at the game see that centre back partnership getting on?
I think Angus was quite sloppy at times with the passing playing out for the back. Malloy had a few dodgy passes, but ultimately Malloy was on my side for the first half. Second half, and he really impressed me. I know he's playing against East Kilbride, with all due respect, but he was real sort of old fashioned, no nonsense. So I just got rid of the danger. I can obviously play a pass when it was on to do so. But as I say, that sort of 15, 20 minutes in the opening, start of the game, everyone just looked a bit lost. But they didn't have too much to deal with, Angus and Malloy. They were fairly comfortable, but I saw more of Malloy at the weekend, and I thought he was really impressive.
Yeah, and of course, I think it was him that bagged the assist for Nicky Devlin, who had the freedom of the 6 yard box to poke us in front. If we move over into the midfield and kind of speak about the performances there, because again, there was a change to the midfield. Jamie McGrath dropping in alongside, I should say, Graham Shinney, with Siv missing out completely from the matchday squad, and there has been no talk of why. I don't think Jimmy mentioned it in his post-match press conference that I listened to on Saturday night, and he only confirmed Dante to be the only player missing from the squad going into tomorrow's night's game. So I'm not sure what that one was all about. And then we started with Vinny Bizawin on one wing and Shayden Morris on the other. Leighton Clarkson continuing to impress, playing off the striker, which was Esther Sokler. I want to speak about Jamie McGrath playing in that deeper role, first of all. What did you make of him in that position? Do you think it suited him? Obviously, he comes up with a audacious chip to put us 2-0 up. Early contender for goal of the season. In fact, we probably saw two early contenders for goal of the season in this game. But what did you make of Jamie McGrath in that kind of centre midfield role? Get out eventually.
He was okay. He did a job. I don't think you could see it wasn't his natural position. And I prefer attacking players to be, in attacking positions. But he did well. I think Shinney really struggled, and I think Shinney mentioned in the post-match interview against Queen of the South that having Nielsen there really benefited him. And I think the fact he was missing at the weekend, really showed, because I thought Shinney looked lost for large parts of the game. And I think it was because he maybe didn't have the same protection that Nielsen offered him. And maybe McGrath was trying to get a bit higher. So, it sort of isolated Shinney a lot more. But, overall, I think McGrath did really well. And as you say, had a brilliant finish. But he did a job, but you could see it wasn't his natural position.
I think for me, the one thing I took from the kind of maybe starting lineup, I know there'll be changes between now and the St Johnstone game coming up. Well, what's that? 2 weeks today? As I said, at time of recording, would be if you're looking at that specific starting lineup in terms of the outfield players, because I think Mitov will start that game. One change that kind of stood out, certainly from the midfield, I would be looking at is moving McGrath out to that right wing, even if you have to swap him with Shayden Morris. And Vinny, his performance would probably mean that he misses out for Nielsen. Obviously, as I said, it's quite good to get you on the show. Sadly, Phil couldn't make it this evening for the recording. Callum continuing to work. That's why he's not on the show just now. Vinny Bizawin, probably your number one fan, or you're the number one fan of Vinny. we've certainly been champions of him on this podcast and wanting to see him given a chance. Jimmy gave him said chance at the weekend. And personally, I can't help but feel extremely disappointed with how he took said opportunity. Certainly when you compare him to Shayden Morris and the performance he put in, certainly the work ethic off the ball was, well, verging on disgraceful. Just there was absolutely no desire to do any defensive side of the things. And anytime he got the ball in a forward position, I don't really think we saw the best of him. I think there was one opportunity where he didn't really control the ball and then slipped and fell over. I know it's the first game, but there was a point that Jimmy made in his pre-match press conference ahead of the game tomorrow night against Airdrie, where he said some players, and he quotes Shayden Morris as being probably one of those players who he hadn't seen a lot of last season. Obviously, wasn't given a lot of chances last season, but has taken the opportunity being given this season, whereas other players haven't done so yet. And I couldn't help but feel when he said that, Vinny Bizaouen's name was the first name that I thought of.
Yeah, he was underwhelming. If that's the right thing to say. I expected a lot more, especially again with all due respect against the level of opposition. For me, the most frustrating thing was he was out in the wing, and then he would cut inside and be in the middle, and then even when he did get the ball in the wing, he wouldn't take on his man. He was, he would take it for like certain, I've completely lost my words. Sorry, he would take it.
Yeah, you'd almost get to a certain point and then cut back.
And then he wouldn't want to continue. He wanted to turn back and play the ball back. So it was really frustrating because as a winger, you want to see players beating their man and getting the ball in or, cutting in or whatever. But he just wanted to turn and pass it back, which was really frustrating to watch. I just expected a lot more from him. And then even I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but even at half time, when the ball, when the whistle went, he sort of just kicked the ball to the side, and you could see that he was frustrated. But and maybe I'm looking too far into it. I don't normally look into these things, but you could sort of get a sense that he was just a bit sulky and just not up for it. And I don't know if that is the case. But
it could be that potentially just frustrated with his own personal performance. Again, this is probably clutching at straws in terms of if you're Vinny Bizaouen, but the pitch ultimately will have played a factor. It looked miserable down there on Saturday. It'll have been a greasy surface. And, maybe he has set himself a high expectation. And, Phil's mentioned kind of the fact about how players talk about Vinny in training, and he's just not been able to convert that chance. And the problem is, I think, for me, regardless of how well Shayden Morris played over the two games so far, we've still got to take into account the level of opposition that we've come up against. And I take this purely back to the fact of last season when me and Callum sat here raving about Dante Polvara after we beat Turriff 9-0, and everyone reminding us constantly, it's only Turriff, it's only Turriff, wait and see how the season goes. So I feel that ringing in my ears that I'm getting excited by what Shayden Morris has done so far, but also the fact that I've got to caveat that with the level of opposition isn't what we are going to be coming up against week in, week out. And I think we'll begin to see a little bit of that on Tuesday night against Airdrie. It's just unfortunate then we obviously come back down in level, with the greatest respect to Dumbarton. But a part of me as well, and I don't know how you feel on this, Jay, it's not really a negative because, again, obviously one of the preseason games fell through over in Portugal. Part of me feels that we're maybe slightly underprepared in terms of match fitness and match sharpness because we've only had that behind closed door game against Cove. Players got 45 minutes each against Peterhead, and then we were straight into competitive action.
Yeah, there is. You can look at it that way. I mean, the level of opposition, you'd always expect Aberdeen to come through the group stages of this League Cup. But, they're not to be treated as friendly, I suppose. But yeah, especially Saturday was my first time seeing us, and I was slightly underwhelmed. I expected a bit more from us, having beaten Queen South so comfortably. I did expect a lot more. Was it maybe just trying different things because we've not had too many games to try that in? You don't know, but for me, I expected this to be a lot more intense, but maybe, as I keep saying, at this point of the season, you can't expect us to be at full, full fitness and tactical awareness and things like that. So, I still feel there's a couple of levels for us to get up to, and hopefully tomorrow, first home game, we could get up to that level.
Yeah, and I think it's a very fair point. Again, for those that have listened to Jimmy's comments ahead of the game against Airdrie, he even mentioned the fact that the players were in training on Sunday because it's the best way for him to be able to get his ideas across to the players, the best way for the players to learn. So, there isn't too much rest going on, but also with a new manager, with new ideas, it's the perfect opportunity to get those ideas across. And I think you do make a good point about the fact that we did, again, with the biggest respect to East Kilbride, I'm sure Mick Kennedy doesn't want to hear it, the fact that East Kilbride did allow us the right opposition to play the likes of Ross Doohan, play the likes of Vinny Bizau, and give those players minutes, opportunities, probably actually with the greatest respect to Ross Doohan and Vinny himself as well, but, allowed us to change the team and play players and experiment in inverted commas without kind of suffering any hiccup. And I think it's also got to be commended the fact that we did win that game so comfortably, because in seasons gone by, that is the type of game where we would have slipped up or we would have only won 1-0. And yes, the 3 points are the most important part, but we'd maybe be on here being a bit more critical. I think it's obviously just that early season, as you say, lack of fitness, lack of sharpness, awareness, whatever you want to put it down to. It's just frustrating. I think, again, the point you made about the way we performed against Queen of the South, that expectation was there. I do think the Airdrie result also probably got everyone's hopes up that we were going to absolutely smash East Kilbride. And I think Stewie Walker, who I know listens quite a lot to the show, kept saying to people who were expecting a high-scoring game that no two games are ever the same. And I think Saturday very much proved that. One thing, though, that Saturday has, again, helped is, maybe when we're speaking about expectation, is Shayden Morris, a player currently thriving under Jimmy Tillene's tutelage, and a player who said in his post-match press conference that he's learned more in the first few weeks under Jimmy than he ever has in his footballing career so far. And that's quite high praise for Jimmy. And the weekend saw Shayden play out on the left-hand side. And since Phil's not here to vindicate his comments, he wanted me to play this clip from the last episode where he suggested doing just that. So this is just for Phil. I'll play said clip. So this is how well we edit this. Let's see if this works.
Maybe trying Morris out on the left, maybe forcing him to come in on his right foot. It's one of those things, I guess, it's a bugbear for me. And, I feel like I use this phrase so often. I will sound like my dad, but it's the one footballing opinion I agree with them on, is your wingers have to be both-footed. I mean, I think the problem with Morris is we've not seen enough of his left foot to know if it actually really exists. That's what takes like Duncan's problem is his right foot just seems to be non-existent at times. I think that's why, you look at players like Dembele at PSG in France, he's so successful because he is so unpredictable, because he's so two-footed that defenders have no idea which way he's going to go. In a way, that's why Niall McGinn was so successful, because his left foot was just as good as his right, that he could go either way. And I think that's something that, like you say, it'd be nice to see Morris kind of throw that into his game and maybe try Morris out on
and try to use his left foot was something we definitely saw from Shayden Morris. And I didn't realise in that clip when Phil sent it to me, he also mentions Ryan Duncan. And we'll speak about the goal first and foremost. Ryan Duncan gets the assist, which I didn't realise until folks started tweeting us afterwards. What a touch from Shayden Morris. Yes, I know he has a pretty clear run at goal once he controls the ball, but one excellent finish near post for the keeper. Yes, the keeper wasn't overly great either, but Shayden Morris's first goal for the club as well. Again, something I didn't realise until hearing Malcolm say that in the post-match interview. that's going to do him the world of good. And these early season performances, he also got an assist as well for the Jamie McGrath goal as well. He's getting assists. He's now scoring. He's a player that is going to thrive, hopefully, and his confidence will be sky high playing in a position he's now suited to playing in, not a right wing back.
Definitely. I mean, you've seen when he scored straight after you could see his confidence had gone up. And I think he's actually, sorry, to go back to Vinny, I've got a feeling he'd be the same. He just needs that break and then, a confidence player, as they say. But it's great to see Shayden, finally feeling confident because, he had times last season where he had to, leave the club for a period of time because he was struggling a bit. But yeah, it's great to see that he's finally, I'm assuming he's feeling a lot happier. And, we're now seeing the results on the park from working with a manager who's used to sort of developing players. And that's obviously the whole idea of the model that we hear about. So, it's great to see players playing in their actual position.
And I think as well, one thing we've kind of come to know and expect, I guess, from Shayden Morris is take the ball, drive to the byline, cut across. And there was times on Saturday against East Kilbride where he was mixing up. And again, that's something that I was kind of hopeful we would see a bit more. And you need your wingers to be kind of causing the defenders to think. And he's showing signs of adapting his game at this early stage. But again, as much as I don't want to get too carried away with the performance, it'll be interesting to see how he copes against Airdrie, how he gets on in these games coming up in towards the St Johnstone game.
It's easy to get excited against East Kilbride, but Airdrie again, you'd imagine that championship level, if you're playing for Aberdeen, you should be above that. But from what we've seen in past seasons, don't get too ahead of ourselves. But look, he's still young. I think he's 21. So there's clearly a player in there. I guess it's just everyone wants the player to play well straight away, but confidence, a good coach, all that can make a difference. And hopefully we'll see that with a hat trick on Tuesday.
And the other thing that I noticed, and I don't know how loud it must have sounded at the ground, or if it just came across extremely loud given the positioning of the cameras for the game at the weekend, Peter Leven's coaching at the weekend. Did you hear much of it when you were at the ground on Saturday, or did you just see it once you kind of went back onto social media after the game?
Honestly, I didn't hear it, but I assumed it was like the East Kilbride team because Cy Ferry and all that was shouting a lot. Assumed it was them, but I did read on Twitter that Levine was coaching quite a lot. Somebody said he was talking him through the game. Morris, and I'm fine with that because sometimes people do need a bit of not support, but a bit of guidance. And then once they've sort of found their way, they'll thrive. And again, that's their job is to a coach, so I don't mind it if it means the players play well. So
I'm glad you said that as well, because I was going to ask what your thoughts were on kind of the players almost being coached through the game, and I'm in total agreement. I think I was discussing this with my friend Keith, and he'd said he'd seen some negative comments about it, but certainly most of the comments I saw, I didn't perceive any to be negative. I thought they were right. Certainly free and Wakali's tweet about the fact that Peter Leven's wife will probably be waking up to Peter screaming Shayden in his sleep did amuse me. Similarly, when Shayden was running with the ball and all he kept saying was, open your legs, Shayden. I was
would say that to her as well.
The immaturity in me was definitely found that amusing. But it wasn't just Shayden Morris. He was kind of coaching, again in inverted commas, through the game. I noticed with Peter Ambrose as well, it was always, get on the shoulder, find the space, or he was telling Leighton Clarkson where to look. You could hear the specific to that midfield. I'm guessing just to kind of get that ball moving quicker, identify where that ball needed to go. And I don't have a problem with that if it's going to help us in the long term and help those players develop.
Yeah.
it can only be a good thing. And again, probably another maybe reason or something that Jimmy saw in Peter to keep him part of the coaching team. So yeah, no problems with that. I'm sure he's got an extremely sore throat the next day though. We've spoken about the players that we've currently got, and again the level of opposition. Are we learning much from these games so far, Jay? Do you think?
I think for the management, it'll be about implementing this new system, or certainly to lead style of play, which might point to why the coaching team are coaching the players so much, just because they need to learn what the manager wants, where the manager wants the players to be, where he wants the ball played. Again, it's difficult to learn anything when you're passing it about against East Kilbride and Queen of the South, but you'd imagine that the more goals we score, the more clean sheets, that confidence will grow, and they'll get used to the system more that Jimmy plays. So you've just got to hope that these things benefit the team for the season, and it's just nice to see actual coaching going on, because for a couple of years, we've seen managers standing on the sideline with their hands in their pockets and
or the goalie coach with the iPad.
Yeah, the iPad. So yeah, I'm all for it.
No, I think you're right, and I think one thing that I really felt from certainly the game at the weekend, as you say, once we grew into that game, you could see the kind of style that we're going for, the long diagonals with intent to the winger, the always looking up, or we weren't just when we were necessarily winning the ball on the edge of our box, just hoofing it up in the hope there was a couple of passes and then, the winger was driving up with the ball. Yes, in the first half, you mentioned the Angus MacDonald. For me as well, Nicky Devlin, they were both that two on that right-hand side were a bit sloppy, along with Sinead, maybe when they were trying their triangles. But again, those players were growing into it. So I think that's kind of a fair point about in terms of learning. I don't think we're learning much about the squad and where we are in terms of from last season to this season, purely on an opposition basis. But yeah, I think you made some good points. But on the other hand then, has the first two games so far shown that we still need to strengthen the squad?
For me, yeah. I still, maybe it's just me with a bit of PTSD from the last few seasons, but I still think we need a couple good quality players to come in, especially maybe in those wide areas, and maybe in the middle of the park now that Pavara's out. But yeah, definitely for me, I think we're a few light. Even when you look at the score on paper, it doesn't fill me with the most confidence. And I can only sort of feel that once we go into these games like St Johnstone away, just the Premier League games in general, that I'd like us to have have options on the bench. I think for the past couple of seasons we've had sort of a thin bench where it's not really been. You wouldn't look at anyone on the bench and say, "Oh, they'll change the game." Yeah. So I think for me, anyway, there's certainly a few light.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I just wonder, going back to like learning and kind of areas of strengthening. Again, I wonder if Saturday allowed us to do those kind of things with Richard Jensen coming on into the midfield and playing in the centre of midfield alongside Graham Shinney. I know you got his match-worn top from that game as well. And Jimmy McGarry came on to play at left wing-back. Now, there was someone that actually commented on our last video over on the YouTube channel saying that they wondered if James McGarry could be deployed as a winger. So when he came on at the weekend, I kind of wondered if he would kind of go into that maybe more forward role where Shayden Morris had been playing, but he went into the left wing-back role. I was a bit frustrated by his performance. I kept thinking he was giving the East Kilbride winger a yard of space and giving himself too much to do. For me, I couldn't help but thinking, looking at St Johnstone and further, a better quality winger will have him on toast every day of the week. So I was a bit disappointed in Jimmy McGarry, personally. Again, Richard Jensen in midfield was an interesting one. again, I think it was David McLennan, someone that's taken up the membership on our YouTube channel, saying that what does the future lie for him being a kind of cover player, but he could turn into a bit of a utility player if he could cover that midfield role. And an area you've just said that we maybe need to strengthen. Maybe it's an area we're struggling to identify the right target. So we're looking at the squad we currently have as an option, obviously, with McGarry covering left back, as I mentioned. Jensen can cover that area. We've got a couple of options on the right side in Jack Milner and Jaden Richardson. I still think the weekend highlighted for me, we need a real out-and-out winger. Vinny's performance especially, for me, highlighted that. Yes, Ryan Duncan comes on and gets an assist, but is he the quality? Is he the type of player that you look at your bench and going, he can come on and change the game?
No.
For me personally, no. And I still have doubts about the strike force that we're going into this season with at this moment in time. Peter Ambrose is undoubtedly raw, and there'd be a lot of pressure on Fletcher Boyd for a full season as well to support Esther Sokler. It's not to say neither can't do that, but I think with the club having that lofty ambitions for the season, you need to make sure you're supporting the manager fully. Again, I know I've seen a few people wondering if we're waiting on funds coming in from certain areas before we can start doing that.
Yeah.
We saw changes to the team for the game against East Kilbride. How many do you expect for the game against Airdrie? Would you kind of expect the Airdrie team to look like the team that would line up at McDermott Park 2 weeks today?
I would. I think if we're not going to take anyone in shortly, you need to start putting together your starting 11. So there's no sort of rustiness or players not knowing each other for, not necessarily not knowing each other, but, not used to playing together for the first league game. So, yeah, I would expect a near to what Jimmy would consider his full strength squad, unless he plans to add to that. But, yeah, I would expect a pretty, as I say, what he would expect to be his starting players.
Yeah, and as I said, I don't really like doing this, but we're going to kind of discuss Dumbarton as well. As I said, unless we make any signings between now and the weekend, we'll come on and jump on and do another episode. So over to the board and the recruitment team for that one. But again, would you then expect a bit of rotation for the Dumbarton game, or kind of continue again in the same sort of mindset? I'm thinking again, your centre back pairing to get another game together, a bit of familiarity in that midfield area, because that is the last chance before we do start that Premiership season.
Yeah, I mean, I'd expect little changes, maybe one or two, but yeah, we need to start getting our starting players on. Sorry, excuse me, but sorry. Yeah, definitely getting full strength squad going, because we need to know what our full strength squad looks like.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well the kind of issue maybe around that Dumbarton game is, of course, Tuesday night's game is very much winner takes all. Both teams sitting with full points so far after Airdrie's excellent comeback at the weekend against Dumbarton. So a win for us on Tuesday night would just need to see us draw against Dumbarton to kind of qualify as group winners. I'm sure obviously ourselves and Jimmy are looking to win every game that we're involved in this group stage and go through with 4 from 4. But again, that could have an effect on who we play. Or again, with Tuesday in mind, he could look at that as a rotation and then go your best team against Dumbarton. It's difficult to say. Again, a lot of people continue to view these kind of games as glorified friendlies, but of course they do have that competitive edge. But how much of a competitive edge Saturday's game will have, I guess, depends on Tuesday's result. Yeah,
I mean, for tomorrow, you'd expect this to be at it, do you know what I mean? Because Airdrie will come here thinking they can cause problems. They like to score goals, and I think we scored 12 goals in the 2 games. Yeah. So they know where the net is. Okay, they can see that a few at the weekend, but they're another side that like to play this modern football on the front foot and playing out for the back. So they'll certainly be up for it. So you'd like to hope that we will be as well and get the job done convincingly. And then, as you say, maybe Saturday we can rest a few before the league opener. But yeah,
it would also be Saturday. Would also then again be another opportunity, as I said, go back to the point I made about kind of lack of preseason games. It's an opportunity to give certain players that maybe haven't had as many minutes some match sharpness before the real action in terms of our Premiership season gets underway. So yeah, lots to kind of see, and obviously it's Jimmy's homecoming on Tuesday, so hopefully a good crowd and a good atmosphere to welcome him to Pittodrie for his first competitive match in charge. But ahead of the game tomorrow night, we once again have got a bit of an opposition insight. So to provide that opposition insight, I spoke to Arran Ewart, who forms part of the Airdrie media team and is also part of the OTL podcast. And I caught up with him pre-Dumbarton game to give me his insight on the game tomorrow night. So let's hear Aaron's thoughts on the game tomorrow night. Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure having you on. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very good, especially after our start to the season. I think you will be too. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you very much. I know you'll definitely be buoyed by, we're actually kind of spoiler alert for the viewers and listeners. We're recording this on Thursday evening just due to the way the recording schedules have had to work for this week's show. So obviously you're buoyed by that 8-0 win for the Dons as well. Also a win and clean sheet. Good to get the era started under Jimmy Tillene. And I suppose for yourselves, continuing the good work that Rhys McCabe did last season and the positives that last season largely had. I suppose the first question I've got for you, Aaron, is did last season come as a surprise to Airdrie fans?
Look, I think coming into it, if you asked all the Airdrie fans, a majority would have said, would probably take definitely a mid-table finish. I know a lot of people would have taken 8th place. But I think for me personally, and I know a lot of other supporters, we knew we were capable of, finishing somewhere near the top end of the table. We knew we were capable of challenging what turned out to be every team in the league. I think there was only one team we didn't end up beating, which is Ayr United. But for me, I wouldn't say a surprise as much. I definitely think we finished a bit higher than maybe we were hoping anyway. I think being pessimistic, I would have probably taken 7th or 8th. But yeah, I think we knew we were capable. We had a fantastic first season under Rhys McCabe.
Mm-hmm.
And, I thought with a full transfer window, we can build on that. And that is exactly how it turned out.
And kind of given the way that you guys performed last season, obviously Rhys is getting a lot of attention. We're going to come on to him in a minute. Has the hopes and expectations been raised ahead of this season, and certainly a season that looks to be an extremely competitive championship for the first time in a long time?
Yeah, well, obviously the championship's always tough to call. I mean, you've got teams, most of the teams I think could finish anywhere from, the top 3 to the bottom 2. And I think more so this season, there's no clear winner. There's no clear team who I think might drift away at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you've got to raise the expectations from last year. Certainly from those, maybe myself, who would have taken maybe a mid-table or lower half finish. I mean, we're not going to finish 4th place and then come in and say, we'll take 6th or 7th this season. So yeah, I think the aim's got to be minimum try and replicate the league position. We also won, obviously, the Challenge Cup last season, so don't want to get too greedy and say another trophy would be nice, but maybe a couple of successful cup campaigns. Obviously, hopefully happening when we play you guys, that would be a decent start. But yeah, I definitely think that we're capable again of making the playoffs. Anything outside the top 4, certainly in the league, would be maybe mildly disappointing considering how well we did last year.
Yeah, no, so I suppose obviously touching on cup success, you're starting the League Cup group stages, giving your goal difference a healthy boost. And to be honest, it is a group that both Aberdeen and Airdrie should be coming out of. So a chance of progression in the League Cup. Speaking of the Challenge Cup win, what did that cup win mean to Airdrie and the fan base?
Well, it's been, for the past decade. Obviously, I'm fairly young, so I've not really seen any the previous success. I think the last time we won a trophy was 2008 at the Challenge Cup. So I was really young at that age. I'd never seen us lift a trophy. I'd never seen us get promoted. In my time as an Airdrie fan, and I know there's a lot that are the same. But obviously, it's absolutely huge. Some great games in there. We won a penalty shootout to get to the semi-finals, I think, and then it's away to Wraith Rovers, who had a fantastic season, and then obviously just going into a cup final. It was just an amazing feeling, seeing the trophy, and obviously we did end up winning it as well, which I was fairly confident at the time we would do. But it's something you'll never forget. I think we've been spoiled recently with moments we'll never forget. Obviously, that playoff win, some amazing away days, some great goals, some comebacks. But I think the cup final, certainly for me, it's up there definitely, and probably the top three times as an Airdrie supporter. And I know you ask a lot of fans, it's been a lot of years of mediocrity before Rhys McCabe came in 2 seasons ago. So just to get the feeling that the club's kind of coming back now to where, in our opinion, obviously we belong. I think we belong in the Championship, pushing for the Premiership. So to win a trophy along the way, I think it means so much to all the supporters.
Yeah, and obviously playing TNS in that final as well. TNS progressing in the Champions League in midweek. Well, certainly last week for those when they tune into this episode. And I think, the pressure probably that was on Airdrie from other fans as well, given the fact that it's a Scottish Cup competition, you were playing Welsh opposition in that. And obviously this season now we don't have that going forward. But, something for you guys to savour. And as you said, kind of a bit of a cherry on top for the job Rhys McCabe's done over the last couple of seasons. Just describe to those of an Aberdeen persuasion listening in, because we only ever see Airdrie when they're selected for that Friday night game.
Yeah.
What job can you describe the job that Rhys has done?
I mean, it still doesn't fully. I don't think it's quite. Nobody really knows what's going on. It just feels like everything we're doing is just getting better on the park, off the park. When he first was appointed, I think a few were apprehensive, obviously. I think he was 29 when he was first appointed. He was still a player. No previous history of being even a coach or a manager. So, at the time, he was the youngest professional manager, I think, in the whole of the UK. I know people were apprehensive, but you could see in his first season as a player that it was fantastic. He was a leader on the park all season. And obviously it's turned out to be a fantastic appointment. So you've got to give credit to those at the club who decided it was worth a gamble. Obviously his coaching staff as well. The assistant manager this season is Aaron Taylor-Sinclair, who's still playing as well. Used to be Callum Fordyce, obviously, who's left for Wraith now. But I think just the fact he's so young with no experience at all, he's come in, done something which took us 10 years to get out of League One. We had some decent managers in there. Ian Murray, obviously, who's doing fantastically at Wraith now. He had 2 playoff finals. He couldn't win either of them. He couldn't manage to win the league. And Rhys McCabe comes in, still in his playing career, in his prime days as well. Somehow he's managed to do it. And we just had the feeling, I think, as well, that we were going to get it over the line that time. And it's just got better and better. Pretty much week on week. You can even see this season how much stronger we are, certainly in pre-season and obviously the opening game against East Kilbride. Whereas in previous years, maybe it's took us a few weeks, maybe a couple of months even to get going. So it's just, I think it's probably the most optimistic Airdrie fans have been for years, certainly for as long as I can remember. I think we're probably just hoping that Rhys can stay now and we keep building, and hopefully he doesn't, go off to any rivals or any Premiership teams.
And that was going to be the next question. Interesting, you speak on his coaching staff, Aaron Taylor-Sinclair, brought up in Aberdeen adds another dynamic to the game on Tuesday night, along with, of course, Mason Hancock, who the last time when Aberdeen were in this stage of the competition was the starting left back for Aberdeen. And of course, you've also got Aaron Reid, who joined the club in the summer. But in terms of Reese's future, what is the feeling every time a vacancy appears that either the top end of the Championship or bottom end of the Premiership? Because there was a few of our fans that were maybe touting Reese for the Aberdeen job over the, when Barry Robson and Neil Warnock both left the positions. Is there that nervousness that he will eventually go on and leave, and are you just hoping that he sees out the season?
Like, I think you see it every time, obviously. One of the bigger teams yourselves, Hibs, I think St Johnstone or something as well. You see it in, the bookies and all that. They've got McCabe as maybe one of the top 10 or something to be appointed.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, certainly the past 2 seasons, I've been pretty confident he's not going to go yet. I think even now for a lot of teams, it would be a bit of a gamble. I think he still wants to be playing as well. Not sure how Premiership clubs would feel about having a young manager who's also a player manager, if that would work for them. But yeah, you've got to be a little bit worried with the job he's doing. There's absolutely no doubt he'll get a big move, I think, in the near future. Certainly, the longest I could see him staying for now is another season or two. But I think that Reese would want to see out at least this season with us. Everything I think is perfect for him right now. He's got all of his own players. He's got his own coaching staff. He's got the absolute undivided trust of the supporters, of the board. Very local to where he stays. Obviously, he lives in, I think, Bathgate, which is very near Airdrie. He's got a young family as well, and he even has I think a coaching business on the side, which he does at the stadium. So to me, it feels like, certainly seeing him, going to a rival I'd be very surprised. But obviously he's got the ambition. I think he'll undoubtedly make the step up either to the Premiership, or he might go down south where he was for a few years of his playing career. But yeah, I can't see it happening in the middle of this season. I think maybe next summer we might start to get a little bit more worried if this season does pan out as successfully as the last couple have.
Or certainly as successful as you hope. And a lot of kind of maybe the success around Rhys McCabe and Airdrie over the last couple of seasons has been built on the style of play. Those that maybe watched the highlights from midweek will have seen that in evidence against East Kilbride. I know as well, maybe in pre-season, I want to talk about an incident from a game you were at in pre-season, which we'll come on to in a second. But how much of that kind of attacking brand of football do you think we'll see on Tuesday night against Aberdeen? Do you think Rhys will stick to his guns or be a bit more conservative, especially with the game being at Pittodrie?
Yeah, well, I think you can't be too naive. Rhys knows, I think, you're not going to go to Pittodrie and dominate the ball. You're not going to, dominate the game. You can't play it how you'd ideally want to. Obviously, I think you guys are definitely the favourites, certainly at Pittodrie. I think on the grass pitch as well, where we've not been quite as successful as we are on our own artificial surface. But, Rhys has said since the day he joined, he doesn't care who he's playing against, who he's coming up against. He's never going to change the style of play or at least the principle. So, you're not going to see us sitting back and 10 men behind the ball, punting up to a big striker and hoping for a second ball or something. You're going to see is try and play football, probably play from the back. But I think we've learned a lot. In the first season there were a couple of games where you could see that we were never going to be able to win the game, by not changing at all the way we're playing. I think in one game we had went a man down and pretty early on. We were a goal down. And we tried to keep playing a very attacking style of football. We left ourselves open. We ended up losing, I think, 6-0 it finished against Edinburgh City, who are obviously now a lot further
Struggling,
down than we are. Yep. But yeah, I think he's learned a lot. We won't be too naive. We'll definitely give Aberdeen a lot of respect, which I think they deserve. But I fully expect us to go and try and play a good brand of football. You know, we've played some Premiership teams under McCabe. I think we've won 3. We've beaten St Johnstone, Dundee, and St Mirren under McCabe. Obviously, all those games were at home, but we've not changed the style of football. We've played good football. We've created goals with good play, with playing along the deck, and I definitely expect Reece to give them the same message, that if we can try and impose our style of football on you guys, maybe try not to let you guys dictate all of the play, then that's going to put us in a better place, more likely, I think, to pick up a result than if we're going to come and try and sit behind the ball. So yeah, you'll definitely won't see a boring game anyway. I think there'll be chances. There'll probably be a few goals in it, and we'll just be hoping that we can be as clinical as we have been the first couple of games of the season.
Yeah, and I suppose obviously with Jimmy Tilleen and his kind of brand of football that he's been known elsewhere, obviously we saw it for the first time in person at the weekend against Queen of the South. That kind of better movement of the ball, better attacking play, and that's still kind of in its infancy and fruition. So it'll be kind of exciting to see two teams actually trying to play football rather than what we tend to see in Scottish football when a bigger team comes up against a lesser team with obviously the greatest respect, and one team just tries to sit in and just see out for a draw. And of course, a draw is not to be sniffed at in this competition, because of course it then goes to penalty shootouts with the option of a bonus point. I want to speak about the Airdrie squad. Before we speak about the kind of some of the summer signings, a player that you signed a couple of seasons back from Aberdeen, Mason Hancock, had a famous now incident in pre-season. You were there against Crusaders where he played a 1-2 with a train. What was that like, and how's Mason got on at his time at Airdrie? Because he was a player that was, as I said, last time we were at this stage of the competition, knocking on the door of the first team, but has ultimately gone on to find first team football with yourselves and do quite well by all accounts.
Yeah, look, the train incident, some things you see you never expect to see. I was actually filming for that game for our stream, so the footage that you've seen on social media is me that recorded it. Very glad I managed to capture it. You see some amazing things in football. It's just brilliant. But yeah, Mason Hancock, I think he's been 100% one of our best players under McCabe. Obviously, he did come in a couple of years ago. He's been fantastic. He's a very young player, but I think the way he plays and with just how mature his play style is, you forget that I think he's only in his early 20s now. It seems to me like he's one of the experienced heads in there. He's definitely a character as well, likes to wind up the opposition. But yeah, he's crossing for some of our goals last season. His work rate is phenomenal. He rarely loses a header. He's very, very physical now as well. He doesn't lose many physical battles, and he's scored a few goals as well from defence. Quite often from corners. He's good aerially, sorry. And obviously he scored one on Tuesdays against East Kilbride as well from a corner. So he's just been, he's been a fantastic signing. I hadn't seen much of him at all before we signed him, so wasn't too sure what to expect, but you can see how much he's improved and he's turned into, I think, I don't want to say untouchable, but he's certainly one of the first names on the team sheet for me.
Yeah, no, it's quite interesting to see kind of the progression. Obviously, it's kind of nice to see how a former player is progressing. I look at him and I also look at Harry Milne from Partick, a player that was playing at Cove in the Highland League, quite local to Aberdeen. These players that were so close to the club and then progressing, maybe one for us to keep an eye on as they progress in future re-signings, you never know. But in terms of signings this summer, Airdrie look to, by all accounts, have recruited extremely well. I know from looking at your social media or social media of other Airdrie fans, there's been some impressive signings. So ahead of the game on Tuesday, Aaron, what players should us as Aberdeen fans be looking out for? Or what players are you hopeful that could hurt Aberdeen?
Yeah, look, it's been a huge rebuild for us. This summer, I think we've lost probably at least seven players who would probably be put down on the starting lineup last season. So it's been a pretty much a full rebuild, and I think we've made 13 signings now. So we've got the numbers back up, but I do expect some of the signings to take some time, obviously, to gel and get to know the players and the play style. But already you can see some of them who are just full of quality. I think the obvious one's got to be Ben Wilson, striker who we signed from Ireland. He's come in, he's played, I think, 2 pre-season games, scored 2 goals in them, and then grabbed a first half hat-trick against East Kilbride. Obviously, that's against opponents who, with all respect to him, I think they're a good side, but they're probably not quite up to the level of the teams we will be playing, certainly of Premiership opposition like yourselves. But I fully expect him to, he's a bit of a sniper when he gets a chance. I think 9 times out of 10 it finds the back of the net. So I think if we can, find him in the box or around the box, that's where I think the goals are going to come for us. But obviously we've signed plenty of players. I look at players like Reece Armstrong, who we picked up from Spartans. He's not played at this level before, but coming in pre-season, he looks absolutely full of quality. Grabbed
He
a
scored
goal
against East Kilbride as well, did Reece, and there's a couple of good finishes.
Robbed a defender, and then fired it, into the roof of the net. So some of the players look to have settled in very quickly. We've got a new goalkeeper now, Murray Johnson, on loan from Hibs after Josh Reid had went to St Johnstone. We've got, a new centre back. We've got a new right back from East Kilbride, who's impressed a lot as well. So there's loads of signings. I've been impressed by pretty much all of them so far. But if you asked me to pick out the main ones, I think Ben Wilson, Reece Armstrong, signed another midfielder called Terrell Aguiman, on loan, I think, from Middlesbrough, who's previously been with Man City in their academy.
Oh, wow.
And he looks absolutely outstanding too. So, it's pretty much a team full of really talented young players. I don't think they'll get it right every week, but I think
it'll be exciting.
Well, it's never anything but exciting for Airdrie. Certainly, I think if they can bring their best game in, I think some Aberdeen fans could be quite impressed.
I'm looking forward to seeing some of the talent on show, because as I said, like, obviously we only get to see you on a Friday night when the BBC pick you, and even we were speaking about your kind of record against Premiership teams. Obviously watched the game against Hearts in the Scottish Cup, and despite the scoreline, still sticking to your guns in terms of style, and that's to be admired as well. In a way, then, sticking maybe to the guns, is that something that Aberdeen could exploit? Obviously, I don't want to, we mention it normally when teams that are used to playing on plastic come up and play on grass. That may or may not be an advantage to ourselves. But other than the pitch, then, what sort of areas could Aberdeen look to exploit in terms of weaknesses you feel this Airdrie team potentially have?
Yeah, well, I think that in terms of the playing surface, there's no doubt we prefer to play all our games on our own surface. I think it's what we're used to, it's what we train on. But I don't think it's similar to, you see all in the media, kind of the Livingston Kilmarnock thing last season, where everyone's saying, look, it's a terrible pitch. It gives them a slight advantage because you can't really play great football on it. I certainly don't think that's the case with ours. It's a new one. It's UEFA approved. I don't think any teams have complained about it. So I don't think we'll have too much of an issue on the grass. I think certainly on a high quality grass pitch. I think where we've struggled recently has been the kind of, what the terrible ones, the ones with all the hills, the bumps, and the waterlogs and everything like that. But in terms of, our team, I think we're still a little bit short in defenders. Obviously losing Callum Fordyce, who was definitely our best defender last season. We've probably replaced him with Aidan Wilson, another defender from Ireland. But we've still got a couple of players in there, Craig Watson, I think, he's looks to be the other starting centre back. For me, I think he looks more comfortable at right back, or certainly maybe in a back three, the right centre back. So, I think in terms of defenders, there's going to be a couple of mistakes in us, certainly if we're playing, the brand of football that we hope we will be. If a team presses well, there's no doubt that it can cause us problems. I think we'll have no problem playing through a kind of a weak press or a disjointed press, but I'm not expecting that from Aberdeen. I'm expecting a very good press, very well organised, and that that could be something we struggle with if we struggle to get the ball through to the midfielders. You guys keep picking it up, on the halfway line. Could be attack after attack, and that's where I think if you guys get one or two goals early on, if we're going to try and play this style, we could be very open. Could turn out to be a comfortable win for you guys. But I don't think. Obviously, I'm going to be biased.
Yeah.
So far, it's not looking like there's too many weaknesses. Last season, the main weakness was scoring goals and finishing our chances. Obviously, it's very early days, but it's looking a bit more promising this season with the East Kilbride game, certainly in pre-season. Finished more or less every chance we've got. So hopefully, I think we're a stronger side from last year, but we're not going to be perfect. Certainly with all the new signings, I'm expecting a very tough game. Obviously, it won't be anything other than that. And then, I think a good press, if Aberdeen can dominate possession and kind of barrage our box, I think that's where the success could come for you guys.
And I certainly think that's something that we're going to look to do. Certainly, if you, again, going back to, it's difficult to say for sure that's what we're going to do, given it's a new area, a new style that we're still getting used to. But from what we've seen of Jimmy Tilleen's sides, a high press and kind of exploiting space in behind, as you say, maybe if you guys are kind of up the pitch, how quickly we transition the ball from defence to attack, how quickly does that catch you guys out? Is that probably the areas that we're going to look at. Again, obviously, in terms of Aberdeen players, obviously Bojan Miovski's future remains up in the air. He sat out the game against Queen of the South. As I said, we're recording this before the weekend. Likely he's to sit out again against East Kilbride. Who knows, possibly against Airdrie. What concerns from an Airdrie fan do you have from player-wise for the Aberdeen team?
Look, there's no doubt. I think if you look at some of the players on that side, they're really full of quality. Certainly judging from the game at the weekend as well, I think Sockler up front had a good game. Obviously, he scored a couple of goals, which is something that could be very big for you guys if Miovski does end up, getting that move, which I'm expecting to happen. I think, as I said, if you can kind of put a lot of pressure on our defence, that's where the issues might come. And I do think you've got the players to do so. I'm a big fan of Leighton Clarkson as well. I think he's absolutely fantastic. I've always really liked him. There's some experienced heads in there as well. Graham Shinney, and a quality goal from him as well. But just how assured he is on the ball, and he rarely gives it away. Always seems to be in the right place. Players like that, where I think maybe the experience and the kind of quality on the ball, that's where maybe we might be caught out once or twice. There's no way we won't give up chances. We're always going to, and if you've got the players there to put them away, like they did in the first half against Queen of the South, I'm certainly expecting to concede at least one or two goals. But yeah, I think considering our focus is going to be on attacking, we're not going to focus on defending. Some of the players in there that you guys have, there's we're going to be a bit worried on the counter attack, and certainly when you guys are near the box, I'm expecting there's to be some very very high quality patterns of play. Expecting there to be some chances, and I think we've got to hope that maybe we get a bit of luck, some good saves, some missed opportunities, and I think that's what we're going to need if we're not going to come out with nothing.
Yeah, and obviously this, as you said, the game's Tuesday night. Jimmy's first home game at Pittodrie. When the draw was made, obviously seeing both Aberdeen and Airdrie in the same group, it was a game that I was really hoping was going to be a weekend game, whether it was home or away. I'm sure probably Airdrie fans were hoping for the same, despite it being midweek and obviously up at Pittodrie. Are we expecting a healthy following coming up from Airdrie?
I think for the big games, more often than not, the supporters do turn up. Obviously, it's Pittodrie, somewhere we've not been for a few years as well. I think loads of certainly maybe the older fans who maybe had been to Pittodrie in previous years, they'll be definitely looking forward to going back. For me personally, I'm gutted I can't make it. It's hopefully going to be one of the only games I miss. But I'm working, which, as you said, the Tuesday night is just, it's what, a 3.5 hour journey for us.
Yeah.
So if it had been on the Saturday, I think it definitely would have been a very big following from us. But I definitely expect there to be a noisy support. Saw it last season up at Dundee United on a Tuesday night where we managed to beat them 2-0. Saw it against Wraith on a Tuesday night as well. These big games, especially the cup games, the fans do turn up, and I'm expecting maybe there won't be too many, a few hundred maybe. Expecting it to be very noisy, no matter what the scoreline is. So yeah, hopefully we should make it a decent atmosphere. Love a nighttime game as well under the floodlights. So yeah, I'll be gutted that I won't be there in person, but I think it'll be a good atmosphere from both sets of fans.
Yeah, and hopefully it's well attended from Aberdeen persuasion. I don't actually think sales are going particularly well. I know we debated on this podcast before about the fact that the pricing was maybe on the expensive side at £19 for an adult ticket for this stage of the competition, given it's still in the early stages of the school holidays and people potentially away, but we'll see what awaits on Tuesday night. As I said, final question, Aaron, really enjoyed the chat and getting the insight into Airdrie from yourself. Despite us recording this before the weekend's round of fixtures, I'm fairly confident we'll follow up your pumping of East Kilbride and do the same. I'm just hoping it's by a similar number of goals and continuing to wipe that smirk off Mick Kennedy's face. And fairly confident that you will also follow up that victory with a win over Dumbarton. I mean, this last 10 seconds could really come back to bite me. But do you see the game at Pittodrie almost be a winner takes all in terms of winning the group outright? And do you think that has any potential influence on the game?
Yeah, well, as you said, I think we'll certainly have more of an idea after Saturday. I'll be incredibly surprised if East Kilbride take anything. I think it won't be as easy as Tuesday night, obviously for us, but I think Dumbarton, they're an okay side. Last season they were. Their pitch maybe isn't ideal for us. It's quite narrow, but if we play close to as well as we did against East Kilbride, we should have the quality to at least get the 3 points. I'm expecting that. Obviously, we've still got Queen of the South to play. You guys will have Dumbarton again. I think that for both of us, that's a game that will be more than expected to win. So, looking at it, maybe being optimistic. I know it's not quite this simple, but on paper, it does look like it should be a fairly comfortable 9 points for both of us. So yeah, I think it hopefully will be the kind of big game, the big decider. Whoever wins probably will end up topping the group. I think that's what also makes it interesting with the penalty shootout for the bonus point. Where if we had under normal circumstances drawn that, both finished on hopefully 10 points, but not this time. You've got that bonus point, so could again for us, I'd absolutely take this. But if it did end up being a draw, maybe we'd be able to win the penalty shootout and get the bonus point. But yeah, at the end of the day, I do expect at least 9 points from both sides. I expect us both to go through, and Tuesday night, I expect it to be whoever wins or whoever takes the bonus point. They should definitely top the group.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Arran, look, it's been an absolute pleasure getting you on Red Tinted Glasses for your debut and hearing all about Airdrie's season gone by and also your hopes for this. Really, I do enjoy speaking to opposition fans and getting that insight, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners will also echo that and have enjoyed listening to you. So I would say all the best for Tuesday, but of course, I'd be lying. But I will wish you all the best for the season ahead, and I hope you guys have just an equally as successful season as you did last season.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, it's been great to be on. Always love talking about Airdrie. So yeah, wish you guys the best as well. Hopefully a good season for both of us.
That would mean a lot for both sets of fans, I'm sure. Arran, thank you. Thank you very much there to Arran for his opposition insight into Airdrie ahead of the game tomorrow. And thanks also to Jay Moyer stepping into the co-host chair this evening to help me kind of review the weekend's game. And thank you to you, the listener, the viewer who has been tuning into the latest episode of Red Tinted Glasses. Remember, if you've been watching, leave a like, comment down below with your thoughts. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, why not do so? If you are a subscriber, remember the membership option is there for you to continue to support the channel. Listening, free to do so. And follow us wherever you listen and get those notifications on for all the newest episodes coming out as we gear up to what will be a busy month and hopefully a prosperous few months under Jimmy Tilleen. So thank you very much once again for tuning in to the latest episode of Red Tinted Glasses. Until next time.